Welcome to this panel on the digital skills gap. My name is Joyce John, and I'm the CEO at 01 Founders, a network of coding schools with a job guarantee. It's really fantastic to see this panel today, and I want to dive straight in to introducing them so we can have an active discussion. First of all, I'd like to introduce Sherry Kutu, serial entrepreneur and founder of WorkFinder. Sherry, over to you to just introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. So I've been playing around in the skills gap for a very long time. In addition to WorkFinder, I'm also on the board of Pearson, the world's largest upskilling company, Founders for Schools, which focuses on teacher upskilling and also children. Raspberry Pi, that focuses on computer skills and courses for teachers around how to impart computer skills. And also Digital Boost, which is a subsidiary of Founders for Schools, but focused on the adult upskilling, particularly for digital skills. It's a real pleasure to be here, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Sherry. Passing it on to Nikki Kirshen, who's the Managing Director at Decoded.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Nikki. I'm the Managing Director of Decoded. We are world leaders in the world of technology education. We partner with organisations who are going through some sort of digital transformation, helping them upskill their people as part of that journey. We really focus on general technology literacy and data skills, and I'm actually really pleased to be part of the panel today, focusing on how we narrow that data skills gap alongside a group of very impressive women.
Thank you, Nikki. Passing it on to Kristen Owings, who's the partner at BCG.
Thanks, Joyce. Yeah, I'm also incredibly pleased to be here today. This is such an interesting topic, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I'm a partner in our people and organization practice and spent most of my time working with clients on large digital transformations. And I would say probably one of the key reasons for failure in digital transformations today is really the lack of talent, or not having the right people. So this is just a fundamental question for most companies today. So I'm super curious to explore this topic today and hear the different points of view.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And finally, Debbie Foster, who's the CEO at Tech Talent Charter.
Hi, Joyce. It's great to be here. I think this is one of the most important topics we should be grappling with these days. It was always important before. I think COVID, the digital transformation that came, and this surge means it is vital now. So at the Tech Talent Charter, we're a not-for-profit that brings together the ecosystem to ensure that the tech industry is as inclusive and diverse as possible and getting that great talent. We have over 700 signatories now. It's bringing together anyone who has a vested interest in fixing this problem. We work closely with a few other ones who I think it'll be pertinent to this discussion. That is Tech She Can, which is similar to us. It's a group of now 200 employers who are coming together to look at what is happening in schools, early apprenticeships, and that inspiration piece. Institute of Coding, funded by government, that brings together universities and industry to look at how we improve what's happening at universities. And then Future.now, which is employers, again, the key theme I have here is about employers and government working together. Future.now is looking at that upskilling for those basic employment digital skills that we need. And it's that whole pipeline that I think we need to talk about today.
Thank you so much. So we all know that with the pandemic, the pace of change and the pace of adoption of technology has really accelerated. And that has created two gaps, the basic digital skills that has widened even more, but also the advanced digital skills that companies need in order to continue with their digital transformation and to grow their business. So the first question really is, how do we identify the skills gap? And what are the different organizations represented here doing specifically in those two areas, the basic digital skills, but also the advanced digital skills? If I can ask Kristen to start off the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the pandemic has really accelerated and put focus on that we need to treat the skill planning as a much more strategic topic. So I think it used to be in most organizations something that you almost came around to when it was too late. So you were thinking, oh, I need someone for this project. And then you started thinking about, oh, wow, we don't have them. So let's do something about it. What we're seeing now is the companies that do this really well, they're moving towards a much longer term planning horizon, a much more strategic approach to it. So this is 5 years out, thinking about what's the business going to look like and really treating it exactly the same way as we would plan our other assets, and how we would do our strategic planning processes and longer term. This requires real analytical skills, but it also really is about the business coming together. So it's thinking about how can our HR functions really support the business with understanding and exploring the needs, and then create different scenarios for what the future looks like. But for those companies who haven't started this process, I would really urge them to say, think longer term, more than just 6 months, 12 months out. And be rigorous, and I think especially not be blind to that there are some roles that you don't even think exist today. Make sure that you capture those as well.
Great, thank you. Sherry, if you wanted to just build on that and talk about some of the things that you are seeing.
Great, happy to, except I think that Debbie said that she wanted to build on it first, so apologies.
Thank you. That's very kind, Sherry. I think I just build on what we just heard, because as well as looking internally and thinking long term, what we're seeing the great impact is where companies are then coming outside their silos to work together and not reinvent the wheel, because these are common problems that need common solutions. And so what we're seeing at Future.now is employers coming together and sharing the programs that they use to upskill those basic skills for employers. At Tech She Can, they're looking at the early inspiration. IOC, the Institute of Coding, is working so closely with business. It's education with business doing that planning. And then what we're doing at Tech Talent Charter is bringing that together. What's happening with boot camps? What's happening with the needs? How are we working together to solve the problem? Treating it just like a competitive secret is the equivalent of investing in a really expensive fishing rod and going to the same leaky barrel that everyone is. I think it's about everyone, once you have that strategic vision, to then have the bravery, not just to think long term, but to think about the whole ecosystem so we can move the whole language and landscape onwards.
I think those are great points, and just to continue building on those, I think I should first speak about an idea that came to us from BCG Digital Ventures, which never would have existed if it hadn't been for your provocation, and that's Digital Boost. And at the moment for Digital Boost, we have, I think, 3,000 companies that have signed up, corporates, to mentor small businesses in achieving 55 separate different types of digital skills. And I love that part. And again, it's mentoring, but it's also offering to do master classes. And that is, 3,000 employers coming together, agreeing the taxonomy, agreeing what the shortages are, and then putting set programs and training their staff to, come on and mentor whenever they want, however, whenever they're available. And I think that, it's employer led, but it's also filling that in. And what we also find is, you talked about talent development as if you're taking them into their company, but even when they're there, there's a massive amount of upskilling that has to happen. And these can't be filled by and I know that we're going to get onto formal education shortly, but these can't be filled by the formal educational institutions. And, I love, what corporates are doing to encourage their own citizens to reach outside. It's not just mentoring people who work for their company, it's mentoring people in the sector. And I think it's vitally important, and we won't close the skills gap without that amount of generosity and forward planning. And I think lining up the incentives as well. I know that some of these companies build the number of hours mentoring and also the net promoter score they get from the people that they have mentored into the learning and development goals, the career progression of the people that work in their companies. And I think that's very much to be, hugely to be welcomed. And I just would also add on with Workfinder, there's 6 competing fabulous taxonomies of digital skills and employability skills. And we have used AI to try to navigate that pathway through every single one of those taxonomies and align them so that if one, is aligned to one, we can translate that instantly into another so that you don't have to struggle if you're an employer or if you're a learner to figure out how you fit in. And I think that's a perfect use of, technology to aid the development of the technology. It's okay to have, competing taxonomies because they're all slightly different. There's massive, we found out when I was leading the talent part of the CLIFA review, the fintech sector has very, very, very different skills requirements than the financial services sector, which is different again from the tech sector as broadly defined. So all of that is really important, but to close those gaps, we need to be able to speak the same language.
Thank you. I think there were lots of points there around both the talent that needs to be built in order to get into the jobs that are currently there, but also once you're in the job, like how do you upskill and reskill? Nikki, if you could just talk a bit more about how you are helping organizations identify the skills gap and what sort of things you're doing to help them bridge this skills gap.
Of course, thank you. I think the thing we're really seeing, and Kristen sort of alluded to it earlier, is that organizations are really needing to plan for the jobs of the future. We're seeing sort of people within organizations now in current roles, they know that the skill set that they currently have are not fit for the job that they're going to be required to do in just a few years' time. And we also know that a number of the jobs that they're going to need to do, we don't even know what they're going to be yet. So it's very hard to plan for. So what we really see is organizations trying to foster a culture of lifelong learning. No longer are people going to do one job for 10, 20, 30 years. They need to learn how to learn on the job. And something that we do at Decode is in building out these data academies, is taking individuals who might not have learned since they were in formal education, whether that's school or college or university, depending on where people finished up their formal education, and really teach them how to learn these technology skills in role. And I couldn't agree more with the way that Sherry just talked about it. Also, then once you have those skills, how do you take those skills and sort of spread them outside of your organization, and really sort of contribute to the broader world? I think organizations really are starting to realize that it's their own problem to solve, and taking the responsibility for that. They can no longer just compete for the best tech talent on the market because it's not ample enough. It's not. There's not enough of it for them to compete. And ultimately, especially companies in the UK who are going through their digital transformations, they just simply can't compete with the Googles of the world when it comes to talent. So we do have to grow it in-house.
And Joycey, I think building on that, there's a mindset that we need companies to begin shifting into, because as well as upskilling their existing staff, they need to start remembering that some of their workforce are in jobs that will no longer exist. And this cross-skilling is vitally important. And there's a lot of people out there who have left tech or never saw that they could get into tech, that cross-training, that upskilling and reskilling, and really what I want to see, and our employers are really focusing on this year. We talk about alternate routes into tech, whether it's the boot camps, the decoding camps, the apprenticeships, etc. I think for 2022, the goal should be to change the mindset so these alternate routes into tech become mainstream routes into tech, that we begin seeing how can we as employers build the structures, the vision, the skills, the partnerships through training, that anyone who wants to come into tech, and when we do that and removing barriers, we will also be building a more diverse workforce and bringing a much wider, this will be greater than the sum of its parts, because that cross-training gives us people who have the wider business skills that will make them even better in tech roles.
I think on that, I was just going to comment on there's two organizations that haven't yet been mentioned. I think the Financial Services Skills Commission has done some really excellent work on that. They've, again, through roundtables and getting consensus with the employers, but they looked at I think it's the top 10 most sought after skills gaps. They've then agreed again a progression from a level 1, I think, until what they call level 5. Now, and they also address they thought, well, should it be beginner to master? And it's like, absolutely not, because you can start, at level 1 when you're 35 or 45 or 55, but you would be reticent to do that psychologically if you had to join something that was called a beginner course or something like that. So I love the way that they have framed that. And I think Skills Builder, Tom Ravenscroft have done very good work on that as well. They focus not so much on adults, so they don't go from level sort of 1 to 5. They've looked at a level 0 to 15. And I think, and they've made it possible for employers to identify, okay, well, if you're, you do a diagnostic coming in, well, you're at a 3. Okay, well, what do we need to do to build you up to a 6? Because I'm going to lead a whole bunch of 6s in about 18 months' time. And they look at, who can they reskill inside the organization? And then what are they going to need in terms of interns? What are they going to need in terms of, work experience, so that they can start evaluating whether or not there's a cultural fit, even if there's a skills, skills is one thing, but the cultural fit is important. And sampling, in a flexible way, I think we'll see a lot more of going forward as well, which is really healthy for all of us.
Yeah, I think this discussion about not just the digital skills, but also some of the other skills like critical thinking, leadership, communication, collaborative problem solving. We saw that in the research that Nesta did, we saw that these were highly in demand, and they were going to be even more in demand with automation. So I guess, the skills gap is not just limited to advanced digital skills. There are over 9 million people in the UK who don't even have access to Wi-Fi or who can't use digital services. So yes, we all agree that employers have a role to play in upskilling and reskilling. But how do you address some of the access challenges, and what sort of things need to happen to address some of the barriers that you were referring to earlier?
I'll start with that. I think by providing sort of platforms, by monitoring. If you don't monitor it, you can't manage it. One of the things that we do at Workfinder, well, and at Digital Boost actually, is provide for our partners. These are what you said you were recruiting for. This is, the UK, world. Let's say it's 70-30 or 50-50. We in your dashboard will be recommending to you certain people, and it will certainly be 50-50, and it will be 30-70 rather than 15. But you're interviewing, this is what your choice was. And you either have dialed up because you have a bias and you want to, right an imbalance that's already in your workforce. So, we allow inadvertent bias to be absolutely crystal clear. So, this is what you started with, your in tray. You went to interview here. How do you feel about that? Or do you want to look at, looking at your in tray again? And okay, well, these are your offers. Are you comfortable with these being your offers that you've made? Because it looks like there may be some bias there. And that's assuming that you start equal. And we know in tech that we're often pretty uncomfortable with the balance that we have when we go out to recruit somebody else. So on the recruiting, I think there's an obligation for all platform providers to allow inadvertent bias, ometers to show if there's been bias before you've clinched that in. The other thing that we do for our candidates who aren't successful is we let them know the skill sets that were possessed by the people who got the offer or got the interview, and then we offer them short courses either via FutureLearn, which is another great organization that I love, and Coursera, and also LinkedIn Skills to help them. And there's lots of free courses that are available, and also mentoring. So whatever way you look at it, you should be monitoring and let them know, well, if you didn't make it, try this and this and this. This will make it much, much harder for you to be overlooked in the progression of getting into a pipeline, into a company.
And I think the data and the analysis and asking those difficult questions is really important. And I like the way you talked about, Sherry. It's about removing the barriers wherever we can find them, exploring what the barriers might be. And I think for some companies, we have to really go back to basics. A lot of times at the charter, our employers will talk about even how they're asking their questions, even how they're promoting the courses, the roles, create those barriers. And particularly when we're looking at underrepresented groups, where we know there is that lack of confidence, where if they can't do 10 for 10, they won't go for that. And we do still have companies that are doing that. If we build it, they will come to us instead of engaging with people where they are and take them at that point. I am pleased with the growth of funded or free courses for people to take. But I think if we're going to remove the barriers, we need to look at the other barriers. For a lot of people, full-time work is not practical. For a lot of people, going back into 24/7 into the office is not practical. For a lot of people suffering from digital poverty, having all of the kit to access the courses is a barrier. So I think it's about when we look at our pipeline of who we are bringing in to train and upskill, looking at who is not there, asking why they're not there, and then looking to remove those barriers are where we're really going to fill that pipeline and get some talent through to where we need them.
That's really fantastic.
I completely agree, Debbie.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I completely agree, Debbie. And I think you're highlighting 2 points here that are incredibly important. And I think first of all, this will take time, right? It's not going to just change tomorrow. But I think there's 2 things that are very encouraging. One is that we see companies are using a lot more data when they're making decisions. So it's not just, gut feel, or we have so much more data that we're looking at now. And I think the other thing is this whole revolution we're seeing around AI and how it's applied in this area, and how that we also, as it's starting to get what we would say we can use machines to what they do really well, and that we as humans can do what we're really equipped to do and what we are distinctively incredible at. And I think that's very encouraging. I think there's a long way to go still, but I think with those 2 things, we see a lot of companies actually making a lot of progress in this area. But I think it also needs to be broadcast outside of the just recruiting departments. This is about, okay, how do I communicate with the education institutions? How do I educate? How do I communicate with government, with all the other stakeholders that we have here, so that they also understand what are the barriers that we are seeing as we are learning more in this space?
I think on educational institutions, I would love them to again rethink how they build, working and getting familiar with how to work into the curriculum. I don't think you should be able to graduate unless you've had work-related experience built in. And these binges at Easter or Christmas or in the summer don't actually help young people learn as much as, part-time or a day a week or 2 days a week or an afternoon a week or something like that. And they're easier for small companies in particular. It's very, very hard to say, okay, we'll have a binge of people in October for 2 weeks. That's very hard. But what we found for growing companies, for scale-ups, and particularly small ones, it works much better for them to have a couple of afternoons a week. If it's 10 hours, 20 hours, it's much, much easier for them to open up a space. If it's not, oh, it has to be 40 hours or 37.5 hours and have to be during this 2 weeks. And I think if there was some give on educational institutions to encourage this, they would find the market just expand. 70% of the market opens up overnight. 70% of all jobs in the UK are small companies, but they can't accommodate these binges, these 2-week binges. Well, get rid of the 2-week binges. They're bad for everybody.
And Sherry, I think I was really skeptical, having worked around HE in the past, on how slowly they can move. It's why I was so encouraged to watch what Institute of Coding was doing. This was bringing together the universities and the businesses, and to really start from scratch, what's working and what's not working, to think about the bite-sized learning, to think about the part-time learning, to think about more than just which languages are you going to be teaching, but that wider piece. And it was great because it is, again, that sharing of of learning. And so there are a group of universities, and the results they had in the take up of the courses, the completion of the courses, the diversity of the people in the courses was fantastic. So it's why I think there is ground, and I think the rest of the universities need to wake up. But do, if there's anyone on the call, have a look, if you're an employer, what the Institute of Coding is offering. That is a consortium of universities doing that. And then if you're a university and you haven't done it yet, catch up, because there's already universities out there doing it, and it's what employers need.
Yeah. And Debbie, I would even go beyond that and say, we're looking at a future, we would call that a bionic company, where we really need deep kind of digital capabilities. We talked about those, but we also need some really human capabilities.
Yes.
Things like creativity, imagination, judgment. Where is that in the education system? We are not educating people anymore that will sit in a call center. So how can we really make sure that we, from an early age, really ingrain these truly human capabilities in our learning journeys?
I couldn't agree more. We're really seeing that demand for those human skills in the workplace, and if we can address that issue at university and in higher education institutions, it would go a huge way. As more and more jobs are automated, we need humans to get better at the things that we're innately better than computers at, and that's communication skills, creativity. We need to be able to communicate the impact that a piece of data analytics is doing. For example, we can't simply rely on machines to do that for us. And we talked quite a lot about using AI for various things. So, for example, in recruitment, we need humans who understand the technology behind those pieces of recruitment software, for example, and we also need them to be able to communicate the results in a way that ensures we're aware of what bias looks like, we're aware of data ethics. All the topics around technology are really, really required for people in the workplace to function in this new world.
Can I throw a challenge down to employers too? Because I think we talked about lifelong learning, and we've talked about probably a lot of our workforce will have come through those education systems that did not naturally do that. So I think it's what we're working on. When I talk about making those alternate routes mainstream, it's as much about how companies are going to learn. This isn't a traditional grad program. How are we bringing someone in and trying to grow the whole of the person and all of those skills, not just make sure that they have a few of those technical skills? So I think, yes, in terms of education providers, in terms of training providers, we should do that. But if we really need those skills, we need to lean into that as employers to learn at how are we building and developing that within our own workspace.
If I could just pick up that point around the alternate paths to learning. So if you look at the current model, right, there are these boot camps that are very expensive and most people can't afford it. And then on the other hand, you have these free programs which are online. So, Sherry, you've mentioned a few like Coursera, Future Learner, and others. But for somebody who hasn't got that confidence in digital skills, learning online on your own can be really hard. So how do you find the middle ground where you're not only helping with motivation and confidence, but also building the skills that are needed, both technical and the broader life skills that we talked about? What sort of things have you seen that help with both those elements, the motivation element, but also building the skills that are needed in a fast-changing world?
If I can talk briefly about the things that we've observed when it comes to like different learning methodologies and such, is we really find if you want to build skills, you need that blended approach. You need the online learning, but you need a mentor. You need someone to handhold you through the process, especially if you're coming from a place of a lack of skills. Our observation has been that pure online players like MOOCs, they work really well when you're already technical, and they're incredibly motivating for people who have technical skills to build on those technical skills, but they just simply don't work for someone starting from scratch without the confidence to get going alone, and you do need that human element. So that's the way we approach our data academies, is a real blend of online learning, in-person workshops, and one-on-one mentorship. And that mentor has accountability to get you through that program, to help you apply it in your role and really learn that well-rounded requirement of skills that you're going to need to be technical in the workplace. But there's lots of organisations doing it in incredible ways, and sort of that one-to-one mentorship element is even coming into the online players. I've seen, for example, Udacity, their online programs now. You can access a mentor, really help you through that program. That's what we would really champion for individuals looking to learn, or for businesses looking to invest in this space.
And I think it's about knowing what's out there, doing the audit of what you can provide yourself as an employer in terms of those wider, but where you're a smaller organization, that doesn't mean you can't do it. There's some great partnerships where cohorts are working together, where they're providing a mix of both what's within an organization and finding partnerships with groups like we've been talking about today. So it doesn't have to be a one size fits all, but we need to think about that more holistic picture of bringing it together. And I think as well as the mentoring, some of the best courses, what they've accepted is, as well as the coaching and the confidence, which is very important, that one-on-one, but also that feeling that you're a part of a cohort. And where I've seen some great success as well is where when employers, even when they bring them on, there's a sense of cohort to be able to go back and talk to each other. Because if you're new in the sector and you're upskilling, your line manager and your colleague sitting at the desk at the right might not always feel like the best person to talk about crisis of confidence or struggling with something. So finding ways that we provide that wider support reaps real benefits.
If we can just pick up that point around the confidence bit, because I think that's a key part, and that also links in with the challenge around diversity in tech. So only 19% of the workforce is female. When it comes to people from disadvantaged backgrounds, it's even worse. So what sort of things have you seen that have worked in terms of addressing diversity and making sure that we have a much broader range of people working in tech?
Well, the first thing I would say on the Tech Talent Charter is free to join, and we have something that has what is called an open playbook of best practice. So just about everything that you want to hear, which is culture, data, recruitment, attraction, assessment, as well as the growth and promotion, setting up apprenticeships. We have case studies and advice from other companies that you can do. But I think the first thing is going back to make sure you have the right culture, that you've removed that bias, because just having that wild-eyed, we've got to be diverse, we've got to be diverse. I used to call it the takeaway window approach. Quick, find me 2 women, someone of color, and a disabled person as quickly as possible. That kind of approach to recruitment, people bounce right through there because they can see they don't belong there. So it's making sure that we do have role models, that we're showing how their culture can grow people in those ways. It's about then working with those partnerships on the ground. So there's no single quick fix, but there are lots of companies that are making huge inroads in that respect.
I completely agree, Debbie. I think also a lot of this relates to that companies, they are much more focused on really living a purpose, and that purpose is broader than just, delivering something for their shareholders. I can say, personally within BCG, we've just done a partnership with Girls Who Code. These are not, all like people who would come and join BCG, but it's something where actually this is incredibly important for us to grow women in digital roles. Some of them, hopefully they'll come and work with us, but some will go somewhere else and have an incredible career. But I think every organization here needs to play a role. And that's, I think, part of like what we see with a much more purpose-driven culture.
I think that's a great point around purpose and linking it back into the role that individuals play, but also what companies play. Because, so far, everyone thinks about how do I upskill my existing workforce, and there's not enough time or resources spent on, how do I build the ecosystem and how do I make sure that the tech sector is more diverse. So it's great to see that organizations like BCG and some of the ones that Tech Talent Charter is already working with are also looking at that. At 01 Founders, we've made a very public commitment that we want to train 100,000 diverse software engineers by 2030. And what that means is that even though our programs are completely free, it's on campus, and we provide a job guarantee, there are still people who struggle to pay for their living expenses. And And that's why, we've got a range of companies that are making
Exactly.
contributions and scholarships. Some of these people might end up working for them, but a lot of them will go work for others in the tech ecosystem. So the question is, what more can we do to inspire more companies to be involved in improving diversity in tech? Not just as a checkbox exercise, but actually taking some tangible actions and putting their money where their word is.
I was going to say that point around putting your money where your mouth is possibly a really nice place to start, because we know that more diverse businesses are actually more successful. So it shouldn't feel as though it's an investment. It should feel as though it's part of being a successful business is being a diverse organization, and it shouldn't feel as though we need to be finding pockets of money from different places in order to invest in these diversity initiatives. However, if we are looking for pockets of money, something that we've really observed in the last few years with the introduction of the apprenticeship levy. The apprenticeship levy was designed by government to ensure that businesses were investing back in skills required for the future of industry, yet absolute millions of pounds each year are being unspent by organisations through their levy. And something we've seen really successfully recently is large corporates donating their levy. You can partner with an SME, you can partner with a charity, a business that doesn't have as large a levy pot, and actually donate your levy over to those organisations so they can access this training for free. And that's, in my view, a really simple way of investing in future talent. And you can put, an organisation could put restrictions on that. They say, we're donating this levy to you because we want you to focus on diverse talent into your organisation and work with them to attract, for example, women or people from different socioeconomic backgrounds into tech roles in their organisations.
I think I'd add on a couple of other things. One is, I think the government, as part of their procurement from large companies, could take ESG behavior into consideration when awarding or re-awarding those contracts. I also think that some of the work of institutional investors like Cevian are making it a condition of their large shareholdings in FTSE 100 and FTSE 250 companies that ESG measures are built into both the bonuses and the long-term incentive plans of companies. So again, you were talking about putting your money where your mouth is. The government could put that as if you want this contract, I really need to see that you've made progress there and that you're helping rebalance our society in the way that we want it. And I think that there are a number of organizations that are pulling together. There used to be, there was a movement a few years ago in terms of investing of, ESG, and then everybody started saying, I'm ESG. It's like, well, prove it. Don't have window dressing where you say you're doing something. Actually show us what you're doing, show us the data. Let's see the resources that you're putting behind it so that everybody's interest can be taken into consideration. And I think we're seeing more of that. I'd like to see more again. I think 60% of FTSE 250 companies now have ESG built into their bonuses, and about 25% of all large companies have ESG built into their long-term incentive plans. When it's in everybody's bonus, I mean, they should want to do it. Everybody should want to do it anyway. But if it gets built into everybody's bonus and everybody's LTIP and their performance measures, then I think we really will start to see that progress that we all yearn for and that we all want to come about.
And I guess, Josie, that's what I'd go. We've talked about getting companies, but if companies are still grappling with the why, we need to remember this is tech. There was a shortage before COVID. There's even more of a shortage. I want companies to want to do it because it's the right thing to do. But actually in tech, it is the only smart way of doing this. If you are not being able to draw on the whole of the population, how are you possibly going to fill those talent gaps? And if you look at the research that of that talent, and particularly looking at the millennials, the Gen Zs, those great young minds are looking for companies, as you said before, with purpose, with mission, and who are building in those inclusive cultures. And so think of the benefits in the research of what you said. We know it adds to your productivity, your bottom line, your ability to pivot into new markets. Look at the cost in missed employment and retention of great talent, and then ask yourself why you're not treating inclusion, diversity, and upskilling at the heart of what you're doing. If you're not, you're gutting your company before you're even waking up in the morning.
Thank you. It's been a fascinating discussion. If I could just ask one final question towards each of the participants on this panel, what advice would you give to organizations so that they can prepare not just their workforce, but also play that broader role in society that we talked about to ensure that everyone is prepared for the future of work? Is there any piece of advice from you?
I'll jump in first. Don't feel you have to reinvent the wheel. There are great organizations and groups of companies who are out there. If you're early on the journey, there are people you can learn from both their mistakes and their successes to do that. But don't wait for someone to fix it for you. You've got to, and as we heard at the start, you've got to start looking and stop playing the game the old way. The rules have changed and you need to lean into this challenge.
Oh, very much agree, Debbie. I think my 3 points would be, first of all, I think long-term, think strategically about it. Secondly, think about this as an ecosystem. This is not about just employees, but this is how you can have a built and maintain and grow an ecosystem of tech talent, which is also about how you feed into that ecosystem. And then thirdly, I think purpose is incredibly important in this, and how you can help society actually deal with the digital disruption that we have now is going to be center for both how you attract, but also how you succeed as a company.
That's really nice. I think mine would be really to build a culture of lifelong learning. I think that's the only way that organizations will be able to bring their employees along this journey and then attract that future generation. And then once you've built that culture, externalize it. Bring your partners, your suppliers, any organizations or groups of people that you work with, bring them on that journey and build that culture with them as well.
Thanks, Nikki. Sherry?
I really would also look to the next generation. They've been really quite badly hit by the pandemic, and look to equipping yourself to onboard them and help them. Look outside and think, how can we be flexible? What's going to actually get me those people that we really want? Because to the extent that other companies that aren't flexible enough don't have them, well, let's have them in tech. We'll take them. And if you don't want them, I'll have them. All of us working together to get us to the place where we need to be.
Thank you so much. It's been a fascinating discussion, and thank you so much for sharing your insights, experience, and thoughts on how we can address the skills gap and how we can collectively collaborate to make sure that we are equipping everyone to be prepared for the future of work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.